flash of light we saw in the sky was not a UFO. Swamp gas from the weather balloon was trapped in a thermal pocket and refracted the light from Venus. But wait a minute. So you just flash that thing, it erases our memory, and you just make up a new one? Standard issue for our life.
So that's how Men in Black execute on Right to be Forgotten. But what actually is it? It emerged from the EU GDPR, and it's that individuals can say, hey, the information, the personal data that you've got on me, I want you to erase that from your organization and forget me, and I expect it to be done within 30 days unless you tell me that it can't. And as an organization, you have to apply that. You have to, or you have to have a valid business reason, a valid reason under law and finance, etc., to retain that information. So that comes back to when somebody signs up, you've also got to have on your privacy policy, this is what I'm going to capture and this is what I'm holding it for. So you've got the both ways. You've got to respect what you said when they gave you your data, and you've got to go, hey, yeah, we finished. You downloaded the case study. That was it. We're done. I now need to delete that. That right to be forgotten is already in a number of countries. So European GDPR was the first. The UK just copied and pasted it when they did Brexit, but it's coming in various countries. So and US states. So California, Virginia, Ohio, etc., are doing it. But it's being strongly considered in Australia that there's very definite movement in Australia. And in fact, the APP 11 of the 13 Australian privacy principles, as I say, it should only be retained for as long as you've got a valid business process to do so. And how many of us keep it for longer? Almost all of us. So what is actually deemed personal data? So data about an identified individual, or with a combination of information you are likely to be able to identify them. So that's the name, address, phone number, email, those sorts of things. Passport numbers, driver's licenses, etc. But also anything that's like a customer ID that I use across all of my systems to link you internally. That's deemed personal information, partly because it can connect to information like the name and the address that then identifies you. And getting deeper in the photographs, your voice printer, the things we don't want to lose now because AI deepfakes are going to get us. And in some cases, employee record information. So if you're in the public sector, employees are treated as individuals, and so that you have to look after that just as well. If you're in the private sector, you don't need to care so much. But it's also into sensitive data. So sexual orientation, racial, ethnic, committees, etc., that you might be part of. That can all be deemed something that could be and has historically been used and abused against people. And as we go on through, that smartwatch information in all of the fitness data. We've seen a couple of instances around where that seems to have been misused. Where you're doing it, you're going, hey, I'm getting some great things out of that, but that's now actually sensitive data. Because if you're like me and I'm sitting in my office 9 to 5 every day now and not moving anywhere apart from getting coffee up and downstairs, then that could be used against me in health. But it also extends to anything that we've got digitally, any digital or digitized data. So if I've got a PDF form or something that somebody did in store, that actually both the physical paper and any digitization is also deemed personal data if it's got that sort of information on. So you've got it in a filing system, you've got it in a store. If it's easily accessible, if it's alphabetized, etc., then that's deemed, if you can find it with ease, that's deemed personal data. If it's in a big box and just says, 2003, you could probably get away with it. But if it's accessible, then it's deemed personal data and you have to look after it. So why now? Why are we talking about right to be forgotten now? A lot of it is off the back of breaches. So every week there seems to be another one, and the big ones, the Optus, the Medibank, Qantas, if you can think back to it, there's our personal data that we were going, hey, organization, I've given it to you. You said you were going to look after it, and then suddenly it gets breached out. And of course, all of that extra data that we're providing, as I say, the smartwatch data that I might feed in to an app, well, that's going wider and broader. And as we're providing more of that information, that information is also going over to third parties. I was doing a cookie workshop earlier this week where, you know, when you go onto a website and here's the URL that I'm doing, that's going off to Google and Meta and Vimeo and YouTube and etc. And it's like, oh, well, in that URL, if I've gone, irritable bowel, all of that text goes through to Google. And so now they're profiling you on that data. And it's like, this is what we're releasing out there. And yeah, in Australia and UK have just released it, you know, looking after our children's data and definitely keeping that secure and secret, and certainly restricting all of those marketing people using it and hitting them and getting them to steal the credit card and buy lots of Minecraft stuff. And then the final one, the EU AI Act, and the minor part that we've in Australia taken that to go, there's all of this data going in and you're making automated decisions, and I don't know, it's this black box computer says no thing. Well, I want a level of understanding of what you're doing with my data so that, again, you're not taking, there's no bias in there, et cetera, or there's little as that. So all of that strikes up, and the OAIC, the government organization that looks across information privacy, they're going, yeah, come on guys, come on businesses, you've got to do better. So 1 in 3 complaints are about data security to the OAIC. The OAIC last year put forward 380 proposals, 380 areas of improvement, of changes to privacy law in Australia. Partly around the change of government, that got chopped and chopped and chopped back, and I think 20 of them went through, but all the rest is still sitting there going, hey, now we're past the change of government, we're going to push in. And the right to be forgotten is one of those. And in their focus areas for the next 12 months, that was late last month, there were a few things in there. So they're going to look at the credit reporting process. They're going to look at data brokerage. So all of those places and clean rooms, for example, of, hey, I'm throwing in to try and match and enrich, and then go, hey, I can go off and market off that. And then everything in the application of artificial intelligence. So moving to that thing the same as the EU AI Act and saying that you need to explain what you're doing in there, and I need the option to have a human review that data and make a decision if it's against me. This big nasty one, excessive collection and excessive retention information. And that's the big one that's tying back to our right to be forgotten is organizations. Yeah, of course we want more from the consumers, and because we know we're going to get a better picture and we can interact better with them. But again, it's like, are you straying over the line in terms of getting data? I worked for News Corp a few years ago. If there was an acquisitive organization, they were them. And we had things like, well, so you want to read 15 articles, okay, pass me your name, your email address, that's cool. Can I have your home address? Getting a bit, your income, your age. How many children do you have? Drop down, okay, for each of those children, what's their dates of birth? and so there's just the thing is like, I just want to read 5 articles a week for free. But the secondary part there is that, well, you haven't reached in. Like when we've been together for 6 months, maybe some information about my children would be appropriate. But that's, that excessive collection we're saying, but marketing could do some great things with that, do them a great offer, find an ad place that they could go that really fits. But you've got to work in that relationship. And I think a lot of people have moved past that boundary in, well, I'm doing it to what I think is for good use, but it is increasing that footprint of data around individuals. And I don't think we've got any government people here, but Freedom of Information Act, access to personal data. There's been lots of failures in just not doing it, just not acting upon it, and not being able to provide the level of information that people go, I know you've got that on me. And it's like, where is it? Why have you not presented it back to me? And so why it matters, why are we into the right to be forgotten? So I'll come back. So the yellows are breachy and the blues are right to erasure. But all of that data we're collecting and holding and then goes breach, the average cost to an organization off the back of a breach of just looking after that and battening the hatches down is $4 million. And then the secondary part of that is, well, if you've had a breach and you've had to report it, there's churn. So people are going, oh, they've lost my information. Okay, well, I don't want to work with them anymore. I'll go off and do something else. So churn. There's a tertiary part there is that the AIC will come in, and they did it to Oxfam this year. Oh, right, no, I'm going to oversee you and make sure that you're doing it right. And nobody wants people looking over their shoulder whilst they're doing work, do they? And then in the right to erasure, so this was near when the GDPR came out, but Austrian Post, $9.5 million for not acting on erasure requests. You know, saying, yeah, I've done it, don't worry, you're all good, and then actually not doing it. And a real estate company, they'd kept lots and lots of tenant data for longer than they needed to. So lots of reasons why we need to take it. But it's as I said, that thing around collecting, retaining data, using it, I believe it's a trust thing. So if you can go, I take privacy, I take taking in your personal data seriously and looking after it, and removing it when I don't need it anymore, it actually gives me two values. It's like, if, God forbid, I did get a breach, well, there's fewer blocks of data then there for somebody else to hit. And that email that I sent to 3 million individuals who went, oh yeah, 10 years ago I worked with you. It's like, why on earth have you got that? So you've got a great piece. And that bit around thinking about it and minimizing where you're holding it, it means when you have to act upon the right to be forgotten piece, you've got fewer areas where you need to go and look and hit and change. And so there's a piece in there, there's a privacy by design, which you're going to talk about in a second, which is starting in with your organization and putting privacy by design in, starts doing those things, minimizing the amount of data, the personal data that you're holding, and segregating it, putting it away where it's much, much harder for somebody to go and get it. And it's only going to get worse.
You're going to forget everything you know about Nitwit.
No, dragonfly. Dragonfly, yes. See. Eventually. What? Eventually. At the end. No, forget it now.
So yes, forget it now. Don't sit around waiting. So doing it now, a stage process. So just go out, start, and I've got some further slides. So go out and find where might personal data be across all of my systems. And then once I've got that, link that into my DSAR, Data Subject Access Request, which is already part of Australian law. So if somebody says, I want you to provide the personal information on me, you have to do that. So align that. And then look at the right to be forgotten methods that you might need to apply. We've got a bit on that. And then build it, and then run it. And then add change management is, and we don't stay static. We'll bring in new data, we'll bring in new systems. So you've got to make sure that when you bring in a new system, you've got to think the right to be forgotten processes that I should implement on those. And one other important thing, maintain the records. So when you've had a data subject access request, when you've had a right to be forgotten request, you need to maintain records and make sure that you go through that process in a reasonable amount of time. And yes, my other one, roll out privacy by design. So next few slides are all about that. So where and how to look for personal data. So in all of the plethora of places. So you'll have it in all of your operational systems, CRM, the marketing, your customer data platform, finance systems, but also in that stuff that we'd possibly historically not thought about. All of the chat logs, all of the online chat systems, there's going to be nubbits of personal information sat in there. All the stuff, if you've had warehouses, lakes, lake houses, that's going to be thread all the way through that process. If you've built a single customer view, you're going to have some master data management process there that's got all of those little facets of individuals rolling up and multiple sources of those. So, and then removing those. And then if you've moved out into graph databases, so looking at counterparty risk or relationships, you'll have it all in there. And then the ones that nobody ever wants to touch, stuff that's in SharePoint or Google Drive, stuff that's in Outlook and Teams and Slack and etc. It's like there's lots of threads everywhere, and any scanned documents, scanned forms that you've got sat in there. All of those have to be considered in this thing around access to personal data and right to be forgotten. There are some tools out there already. So Microsoft Purview, if you're a Microsoft shop, there's e-discovery stuff in there that will start searching around, going, how big is this problem that I've got? IBM Guardian has similar pieces. Other ones, OneTrust, who do cookie compliance as well, et cetera, et cetera. But there are tools out there that can help us go and scan, search, and go, oh yeah, there's some over there, to give you the size of the prize. I don't know if size of the prize is the right thing, but it gives you some estimation of how big and nasty it's going to be. And yeah, start on it now. So this is the privacy by design piece. So that starting piece of why we're collecting this data. Are I actually doing something valuable with it? Could I sort of gather slightly less in this sort of firm? Do I really need date of birth? Or would age range be enough for me to do things, to still do valid and useful things? And an age range isn't deemed personal data because I couldn't identify the one person in there. Getting rid of that data when you're done with it. So set up retention policies. So after it's been in the CRM for 2 years and they've not interacted with me, just delete it. Yeah. And if I've got, here's a bit of data, but in the warehouse I've joined it all together, that might actually be able to re-identify. So consider some of those pieces. That's a real deep, dark, dirty area that we won't do much on, but yeah, you need to think about it. And then this thing, privacy enhancing technology. So when I'm pulling in personal data, put it off to one side, secure it, etc., and make sure that, hey, there's very few people in the marketing department actually need to see names and addresses. They might on the final thing of checking it out, but your data scientists, why do they need to see personal data? Again, move it off to one side. And I do work with Tourism Tasmania. We had a system where we invite journalists and trade in, and they do what they call a FMILS program. So we go, right, we're going to do 5 days, and we're going to go here and stay here, and you'll see this amazing thing, get some great photos. But to do that, to book that whole trip, we need your passport number, and we need your date of birth, and we need your full name. So what we did in the design of that, we actually put a completely separate table. And we said, that's going to be stored in there for the period where we're doing the booking. And as soon as that trip is over, we're going to delete it because we have no other. But we're keeping all of the other data. So all of the things that they went on the trip, etc., this journalist went on the trip, we keep. So this is privacy by design. Other bits and pieces we can do is tokenization or one-way hashing. So I put that personal data in, and I create a random key, nothing that's off that data, and then I carry the key around and just keep that personal information in one corner. So I could potentially do something with it, but if I delete the origin of that key, I can never re-identify that person from that information alone. As I said earlier, derivation. So just broaden it out. Is like make it less identifiable, even if you do cross things over. And then in the consumption side, so if you're pushing this out, for example, for research, possibly for the data scientists, if you're putting it out there, there are tools now where you can add noise to that data and basically de-identify it from, or I could pin down, I found Steve. Yeah, I found Steve because I know where he lives and various things. And K-anonymity. So when you're putting data up, applying it. So if I apply that filter and that filter and that filter, I could get down to unique individual. That's re-identification. So k-anonymity goes, no, I want no group smaller than 5 or 10 or 20. And that's one of the things, like in the census information, that's the sort of thing that they apply there. No group smaller than 25, even if you put all of the filters on. I'm not going to talk homomorphic encryption. I still don't understand it, but it's there. And then the other is, you know, as we're working through this data, well, we want to have training systems, and those training systems, we want to have something that looks like real data. And any of those data science or any of us doing development in the data lakes, we want something that feels like real data and the data that we're going to get from the systems. So synthesizing that data, generating from that stuff, creating something that looks like and has integrity across it, but isn't real data. And that's, again, privacy enhancing stuff. And again, secure. I don't think we've got any of these. It's basically, here is a bit of hardware that is properly keeping this in a completely separate area and nobody can touch it and da-da. But they were expensive. So implementing it, talk through a bit. So I'll pull out here that thing I said earlier. So if I've got somebody just come in and put an order in and bought an item, and they then come in a month later and say, no, forget me, you probably have a valid reason not to delete that personal information, because you go, well, what happens if we have a recall? I feel that I've got a valid reason to keep that because I need to communicate on a recall. Or it's less than a year. You come in and you say, it's broken. And I go, well, I didn't sell it to you. All of those sorts of things can start being valid reasons for you to retain it. And in the financial services, it's retaining it for 7 years. In telco, we have the metadata law, which says I've got a record of all the phone calls, all the texts, the metadata around it, but that needs to be retained because, you know, if you're a bad actor, we need to be able to come back and do that. But otherwise, you need to go into your CRMs, your marketings, and you need to delete. You need to delete that parent record and delete all the children records. And you can start going, oh, that's going to be quite nasty because and especially over here. Well, if I was reporting on that, hey, we made $1 million in sales last month, and then suddenly it's 990,000. So that thing around segregation becomes a really important thing. Move that personal data off to one side, keep the master record so that all of the, hey, here are orders and here are all, you can keep them. And do that in your operational system, do that through all the others. And the other there, as I say, in that minimization, why am I keeping 3, 5, 10 years of stuff in the CRM? Well, Salesforce like you to do that because they can charge you more. But let's actually do that. We still can have it in the warehouse, but let's clear down the operational system. So if somebody hacks into the operational system, they're going to get less data. It's still nasty that they get some, but they're going to get less. But also remember to cascade that down to link system backups, et cetera, et cetera. Don't just go, hey, because I delete it from here, it will delete it from any other things. As I said earlier, I've never done it. But if you're in like all of the Outlook, all the things, and just going, hey, there's a name in 17 emails, and it's like deleting those 17 emails, and it's there are tools coming through, but it's still a really nasty thing to go, well, is that really personal data? Is an email on itself something that's really personal data? And you'll usually say yes, but do you have a reasonable denial reason for that? We'll work through that. HR systems, very definitely. So HR systems, if you've just done an application and you never got the job, then it should be deleted. If you've gone through and you've been an employee, then there's a valid reason to keep it. Just like the Outlook, content management systems, all the stuff that we've got in SharePoint, et cetera, finding it and deleting it. There's all sorts of potentially nasty bits and pieces that we got in there, but you need to run through it and go, have we got a reasonable deniability on this of not doing it? Otherwise, you have to make it part of your process. And the paper archives, same thing. If they are just boxes in the corner and they've gone off to Iron Mountain, then you probably don't need to worry. But if you've got them accessible in a filing cabinet, they're still deemed and you still need to go rip it up or go, no, we kept it because there was a reason to keep it. As I said, the master data management, your single customer view, your customer data platforms, Actually, it's a good source to go and find it. So when you're doing the data subject access request, if you get your single customer view, probably all those source systems that fed that, that's a good thing of going, oh yeah, I need to look in there and there and there. But you still need to delete it. And you need to make sure that that ripples through all the processes. Because if you've got a golden record that's made up of 3 systems, if that golden record's still sitting there with the best set of personal data, it's still personal data. And as I say, in the risk, in the finance data, you've probably got a valid reason for keeping that for the 7 years, even across household views. So that, you know, the household risk, etc. Warehouses, if anybody's built a strong data warehouse, you've got a record, a history record of every change. And so now you don't just go, hey, create a new record that doesn't have that information in it or it's masked. You've got to go through every one of those and obfuscate it or delete it. And so, as I said earlier, the deletes, they can impact your dashboards, they can impact machine learning and any sort of forecasting you've done. It would have to be a large number to skew your machine learning, but there's also a thing there in like, well, aren't they interesting? If they've come in and asked for a right to be forgotten, there must be something they've done wrong in the main. There'll be some nasty people out there who are just doing it, but that sort of skew. So in other information still not back to the unique individual, but where there's some campaigns that we did that maybe stretch the boundaries into creepy territory, and go and look at that and utilize that sort of information. Denial's not normally an option unless it's back to this risk finance data, is you pretty much have to delete it or fully anonymize it. And then partners. So all of those people that hey, I'm using your SaaS platform, some of that personal data is going in, but you're looking after it. Or, oh, you're doing my loyalty program. You've got to make sure that they also delete it. They don't just go, yeah, got it, mate, all good. But then they don't delete it. And that bit, maintaining the records. So the first bit, still also under your data subject access request, is you've got to go through the appropriate processes to verify they are who they say you are before you furnish them with personal data of somebody else. But you've got to go through that process. You've got usually 30 days unless you say, hey, I've got through and I've found there's lots of information and we might need to redact some. You've got 30 days to do it. So get it, record all those interactions, run your process. You've got to present that information back in a readable form in the DSAR. But you've also got to do things like, hey, here is a segment or a profile or something that I gave to you. I've got to give you understandable information on the back of that. And the AI Act's probably going to make that bigger and nastier in what we do. So we've gone through this right to be forgotten process. I put James Hartwright, I've emailed him back, hey, here's the information, and it's in a nicely password protected. But now I've got a record of James Hartwright, his email address, in my right to be forgotten system. But you're supposed to have forgotten. An immediate forget is not appropriate because there still might be some backs and forth. But after, let's say, 30 days, do the final delete of that, the personal information in that right to be forgotten. You still need to register that something was, that you did some pieces, but you do need to remove that personal information too. And then the brave new world. So we said the chats, etc. So there's all sorts of stuff. Now we're moving into AI. That here's a call log. Hello, Mr. Smith. I'm Alice. Can you add my daughter Mary? Here's her phone number. And that's now we're throwing that into vector databases, into LLMs, and etc. So we've got to do something to stop that, because once it's sat in the LLM and running it, like deleting that is almost impossible. RAG's a little bit easier, but it'd be better not to throw it in there if we can. So one option, just strip it out. But then it starts becoming less understandable to the LLM. Yeah, you can't really work that out. The second one is some base masking. Hello, name, I'm name, can you add my names? It's mobile and name. So it's getting slightly better because you can say what it is, but it's not, you don't know that there's the agent, the customer, and a third party. So a much better way is masking with something. Hello, the name of the caller, I'm the name of the agent. Can you add my relation child? third party and her name. This is now, so that's obviously, we don't want that one, but this is eminently possible through various tools out there. We can use some of the LLM natural language processing to do this now quite easily. I've got a little ChatGPT script if anyone who wants to borrow it. But we can do all those sort of things. So stop that going in, but keeping the context of what it is so that those LLMs, any of the queries, any of the searches are actually going to return something that's still valid, contextual, and looking at sentiment, etc.
I know nothing. I know nothing. Nothing. Forget that. I forget everything. I know nothing.
And hopefully that's where we will be by the end. I've been call for time, and just a couple of things is like, so looking at where else it's gone on, it's really hard to find the volumes of right to be forgotten, because again, as I say, if you got lots of requests for right to be forgotten, you're probably doing some things wrong. But what we can get is some bits and pieces in terms of the volumes of the DSARs, and some, hey, if you're going to run a manual right to be forgotten, it's going to be about $2,500 per request. And then if you look at that, so based on Sweden and France, 6 to 7 right to be forgotten requests per 10,000 people. So if you're an organization with about 50,000 customers, you can't see that, but it's 25 requests. But 25 requests at $2.5 grand a go per annum starts adding up. And if you're up in here, lucky you. But like in the mid-tier space, it's going to cost you $500,000 per annum to do these right to be forgottens. If we apply our privacy by design, our privacy and minimization, etc., it's going to cost you money to put it in, but it means that I don't need to cascade it through my warehouse, all of those things. I don't need to do it here. I don't need to do it there. So there are ways that we can do this in a sensible way, where spending some money now, spending some money as we're bringing new systems, changing the systems, is going to make this number a lot lower. And can we do good enough? Like everything, nobody's got an unlimited budget to do this, but it's like in the vast majority of cases, if the OAIC does get in, if you do have a breach, or if you do something in here, if you've got a process that you've been following but you missed something, they will look upon that way, way, way more favorably than if you had nothing. So put the things in that start making sense. Pick off the low-hanging fruit and run those through. You'll probably still get into trouble, but it'll be minor. It'll be less. They won't go, I'm going to do oversight. They'll go, just go up and fix those. Tell me where we've done it, and then we're good. And add it in for new projects. So any new project, any new system you put in, do the personal information check. Hey, are we bringing in new personal information here? Are we looking after it correctly? Do we have a retention process? So yeah, document the systems, go and look at your DSAR process, work out what you need to do in right to be forgotten, implement it, put in that change management process, maintain your records, and roll out privacy by design. That's me.
Great.
Cool.